Shalom, everyone. Peace, peace. I want to thank you guys for joining the Fourth Angels Learning Center. My name is Jadiel, and today we're going to be discussing something very important, something that's a lot of times misunderstood because there's a lack of understanding or a lack of, I would say, patience when reading the scripture. You know, sometimes we read through, we surface read, or we read past certain very important key points that allows us to understand and get a clearer picture. So I want to make sure that this is a clear understanding. This is something extremely important. This is something that was established in the very beginning in the book of Genesis. So we're going to be talking about marriage, and we're also going to be talking about divorce. We're going to be referencing some of the statements that Messiah made, and we're going to go back and see if the Torah supports these ideas. So let's get started. Now, the first place that I do want to get started at is a couple examples of our forefathers getting married, such as Isaac, such as Jacob. So let's start with Isaac and Jacob and see kind of where the example comes into play. So let's go to Genesis. I'm going to share my screen. Right? Let's go to Genesis. We're on Genesis chapter 24. So we're going to talk about when many times we read this story and we kind of look over or kind of gloss over what actually occurred. The only thing that we look at is the end result. You know, we see Rebecca seeing Isaac covering herself, and then Isaac takes her into his mother's tent, and then he was married, right? And this is a false view of how to look at marriage. So we're gonna look at this, right? Let's take a look. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, so let's start. Just pick this up there. We're gonna start at Genesis. Genesis chapter 24. We're going to look at a few verses in verse 56 and 60 first. Verse 56 and 56 to 60. Okay, so let's take a look at this. 56 to 60. We're going to look at these verses. It says, "And he said unto them, hinder me not, seeing that Yahuwah has prospered in my way. Send me away that I may go to my master." This is Eleazar. This is the servant of Abraham, telling Laban that he needs to go, telling Laban and his father that he needs to go back to Abraham, that he's staying there too long. They said, "We will call the damsel and inquire at her mouth." And they called Rebekah and said to her, now here's where the covenant vow comes into play. "Will you go with this man?" So the stipulations is that she's going to go with Eleazar, bring her back to his master Abraham, present her to Isaac in order to marry. This is not, there's no, after this conversation, it is a vow. And this is what Messiah was trying to tell us with let your yea be yea, that every statement you make, Yahuwah is going to require it of you. So it's not that she has to say, "I vow in the name of," she doesn't have to do that to make a vow. She just has to confirm the agreement. What was the agreement? I came, I gave all of these jewels and all of these diamonds, right? And now you have to either disagree or agree. So they come to her and they ask Rebekah, "Will you go with this man?" And she said, "I will go." And they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "You are our sister. Be thou a mother of thousands of millions. Let your seed possess the gate of those that hate them." So look at what they're understanding. "Will you go with this man?" "I will go." And they already understood, you are now going to be married. You are going to have children. And they blessed her, saying, may she be the mother of thousands, and may her seed possess the gate. So there's this understanding that she is making a covenant to go and be married and bear children unto Isaac. Okay. So she's agreeing with the covenant. Before they came there, let me see if I can bring this up. Before Eliezer came there, he was having a conversation with Abraham. Abraham was telling him not to bring his son over to that country, but he made a certain request, and he made it known because they had to agree to a covenant at that moment. So it says here, the servant said unto him, peradventure the woman will not be willing to follow me unto this land. Must I needs bring your son again unto the land from whence you came? Abraham said, beware that you bring not my son there again. It says, Yahuwah Elohim of heaven, which took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and which spake unto me and sware unto me, saying, unto your seed will I give this land. He shall send an angel before you, and you shall take a wife unto my son from there. Very confident, very confident. So he know that somebody is going to accept this covenant. It's not a matter of whether or not they will go. It's saying, will they? What if they don't accept this agreement, this covenant? Abraham is very confident that the angel that Yahuwah will send is going to kind of lead him to the right place, to the right person. And this is where we got Rebecca. So furthermore, so after she agreed and they blessed her, she got to, let's go to verse 64. She got to the location with Eleazar, and it says, and Rebecca lifted up her eyes. When she saw Isaac, she lighted off of the camel. For she said unto the servant, what man is this walking in the field to meet us? And the servant said, it is my master. Therefore she took the veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things which he had done, and what Yahuwah had done. And Isaac brought her into his mother's Sarah's tent and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And Isaac comforted after his mother's death. So he became his wife. So before, when the covenant was in an agreement, then she was referred to as something called betrothed. We're going to talk about that in a second. But after the consummation, she became his wife. So the consummation is a ratification or confirming the covenant that was made. I will be your wife. You will be I will be your husband. Then they confirm these vows with consummation. So consummation is not the covenant. Consummation is the confirmation of the covenant that was made, the marriage covenant that was made between the man and the woman. We're going to look at another example. Well, I don't think I have to go to Isaac. Jacob was betrothed to Rachel, or promised. He was betrothed that Rachel would be his wife. So he was working 7 years to receive his wife. And then he snuck Leah in there. So even though that he didn't have her or consummate or confirm the covenant, she was already promised. So there's nothing else that's going to occur. She's not dating. She's not doing anything else. She's basically simply waiting to ratify the vow, the covenant vow, the marriage covenant vow. So let's go to a couple of instances in the Torah to kind of see how certain things is worded. Because there's this idea that when you sleep with somebody, then you're married. That's a real foolish thing to say. It needs to be said much. There has to be a breakdown. And it seems like there's not a breakdown a lot. There's a lot of people are still focused on this idea that physical sex equals marriage. Oh, we had sex, now you're married to me. That's not how it works. If you have sex without any vow or covenant vow, you're a whoremonger. So let's look at this. We're going to look at the word betrothed, right? Exodus chapter 22, verse 16. It says, and if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed and lie with her, she shall surely endow her to be his wife. So this is after he lies with her, then he shall endow her to be his wife. Let's look at what that's saying, right? So this is just talking about outside of the realm of promising, outside of the realm of all of these things. It says who is not betrothed. So what is betrothed, right? Betrothed is going to be mentioned as, what do we see here? What do we see here? Engaged, engage, espouse. Espouse means to promise, to be promised. So this is what the word betrothed means. It says if a woman is not betrothed and lie with her, of course, it's referring to the word lie is shakab, which means to lie down for rest or sexual connection. It says with her, he shall surely endow her. He shall surely, let me show you what this word means. That word endow is the word mahar, and it means to bargain through the idea of readiness. You be ready to bargain, to wed, meaning that you are going to express that you should marry. So it says, endow her to be his wife. So if they already had sex and sex is marriage, why is he trying to bargain with her or express to her that she needs to be his wife after they had sex? It would be simply, you're married already, right? But that's not the case. So this man takes a woman that's not betrothed, and he lies with her, and then he starts to bargain to see if he can marry her. It then says in verse 17, if her father utterly refused, that means that you're not married until you go through the proper channels, until there's a acceptance by the parents, and if there's not a parents, until there's a covenant that was made before witnesses, because whether there's witnesses, two or three witnesses establishes the matter. That's Deuteronomy 19. So it says, if her father utterly refused to give her to him, then he shall pay the money according to the dowry of a virgin. He shall pay what the dowry is for a marriage to a woman. He has to pay that anyway because he did it without going through the proper channels. So guess what? Just because he lied with her, that does not mean that he was married. You understand? So he's not lying or having sex does not mean that you are married. Let's go to a few more examples. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy. We're going to look at chapter 20. And we're going to start at verse 7. It says, and what man is there that have betrothed a wife and have not taken her? So you notice the two difference, right? To take her and betroth her. So when we were looking at Isaac and Rebekah's example, it used those terminologies. Let me see if I can go back there for you. Let's go to Genesis 24 real quick, and then we're going to come right back. Genesis 24, we're looking at verse 64. Not verse 64. We're looking at verse 67. It says, and Isaac brought her to his mother Sarah's tent, and he took Rebekah, and she became his wife. Let's take a look at that. I'm interested to see. Maybe I overlooking an important word here. Let's see. And he took her, where it says, and he took her. That word is laka, meaning to take in a wide sense, to receive, to seize, basically received her. So he took her to be his own. So Look at the statement that's mentioned in Deuteronomy 20. It says, "For what man is there that have betrothed a wife or promised to marry or made a vow to marry and have not taken her?" Confirm the promise. "Let him go and return unto his house, lest he die in battle, and another man take her." So if he's betrothed, this scripture is saying he does not go to war. He has to go and consummate or confirm and be with his wife, or another man will be able to take her for their wife. That means that betrothal is not the same as taking her to be their wife. So betrothal is the instance of the covenant vow, the covenant promise. Um, and if you make a promise, but you go to war, and then it says he die in battle, another man would then take her as his wife. So he's telling them, if you are betrothed and you're not married, you're not going to go to war. Yahweh is going to allow you to go and return to your house so you can consummate the marriage, so you can even possibly bear children before you go out to war. So betrothed is something specific, and taking her to be your wife is another. It's a confirmation of the vow or the covenant marriage vow, which would engage or allow them to engage in a betrothal, meaning when you make the covenant vow, now you are betrothed or promised to one another. Let's look at another. Let's go to, this one is very important. Let's go to chapter 24. Now, this is very important because this is what's going to express and explain what Messiah was talking about in the book of Matthew and Mark. So let's look at this. Deuteronomy chapter 24. We're going to look at verse 1-6. It says, when a man have taken a wife, right? Taken a wife. He took her, meaning that he confirmed the covenant and married her. And it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, right? Because he have found some uncleanliness in her. Then let him write a bill of divorcement and give it to her hand and send her out of his house. So we're going to talk about this, right? We're going to focus on this, but we're going to read the rest. He have found some uncleanliness in her. We're going to look that up in the Hebrew. It says, when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. If the next husband hate her and write her a bill of divorcement, this is an implication of the same uncleanliness. If the second husband has the same issue and give her a bill of divorcement and send her out of his house, or if the second husband dies. So either way, if the second husband dies, or if the second husband lets her out, which took her to be his wife, the first husband, which sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife. After that, she is defiled, meaning that she is basically cut. For that is an abomination before Yah. What's an abomination before Yah? The uncleanliness in her, as we saw in verse 1. The uncleanliness is the abomination before Yah. It says, you shall not cause the land to sin. How is she causing the land to sin? Because her husband just doesn't like her anymore, or because her husband has some type of arguments with her. She doesn't do the dishes, or she doesn't do that. No. It says, which Yahuwah your Elohim give you an inheritance. So there's a sin that you shall not cause the land to sin. So there's a sin involved in this statement because he have found uncleanliness in her. So let's take a look at that in Hebrew, please. H6172, we're going to pull it up. It has to do with nudity, promiscuity. It has to do with shame, unclean, nudity, shame, right? So let's see what scripture. Let's look at a couple scriptures just to show the same word, right? We have the word erva or arva. So let's look at arva in Leviticus chapter 18. See what it's talking about here as far as nudity is concerned. it says, these are the judgments, right? It says, none of you shall approach to any that is near to kin to him to uncover the nakedness. I am Yahuwah. The nakedness of your father, it talks about the nakedness of your mother, all these different types of people. It's talking about the nakedness. Basically, it's talking about uncovering the nakedness of individuals that you should not be uncovering the nakedness of. That's what arva means. That's what it said. Let's go back to Deuteronomy 24. That's what it says, that he found that she was nude, that she was naked with someone else. But let's look at a little bit more proof to that. Let's look at Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel. We're looking at Ezekiel 23. Let's look at verse 18. We're going to look at a couple verses in this chapter. In verse 18, it says, so she discovered her whoredoms and discovered her nakedness, arva. Then my mind was alienated from her, like as my mind was alienated from her sister. This is referring to Yahuwah dealing with Israel and Judah. Now watch what it says here. It says, she multiplied her whoredoms in calling to remembrance the days of her youth, wherein she had played the harlot in the land of Egypt. In the land of Egypt. So we clearly see that the land of Egypt is being polluted by the whoredoms, by the nakedness, by the arva. The nakedness is polluting the land. Let's look at verse 29. Look at what it says. They shall deal with you hatefully and shall take away all your labor and shall leave you naked and bare. And the nakedness, look at what it says, the nakedness of your whoredoms shall be discovered, both your lewdness of your whoredoms. So the nakedness of your shall be discovered, meaning that they should come in and shall find any uncleanliness with her. So this is what it's talking about. Let's look at one more instance. I think everybody knows this. The prophet Hosea talking about Israel's promiscuity, so to speak, spiritually. It says, therefore will I return and take away my corn in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof, and will recover my wool and my flax given to cover her nakedness. So this is what Yahuwah gave to cover her nakedness. And it says he's going to take it away. It says, now will I discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of mine hand. So what is Deuteronomy chapter 24 saying? If he has found or found out some type of uncleanliness, some type of nudity, promiscuity that's been going on, some type of fornication, then he will write her a bill of divorcement. So yes, there is a certain way to execute judgment on adultery. To execute judgment on adultery, you have to bring both parties before the judges. The judges will have to do investigating and things like that. But there is many different instances in which those things cannot occur. But the interesting thing is, if the first husband finds out or deems a situation or scenario as being impure because he found out that she was naked or with another person, and then she goes into another husband and it happens again, that she has to be cut off. Why? Look at what it says. Not cut off, but she has to be deemed as this type of person. Look at what it says here. It says that she is defiled, for that is an abomination before Yah. What's an abomination? Being nude, being a promiscuous. It says you shall not cause the land to sin. So this is what that means, that she's causing the land to sin. She's being promiscuous with other men, but they just can't pinpoint or narrow down the witnesses or anything like that. So, and this is the verse we were talking about before, verse 5. It says, when a man takes a new wife, he shall not go to war, neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home for 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife which he hath taken. This is a blessing. I wish we lived in a society, or we could put together a society where we can do that for the individuals that were getting married. But instead, the society is surrounding destroying relationships instead of building them up. But anyway, clearly, verse 1 of Deuteronomy 24 talks about finding uncleanliness or nudity or promiscuity, which causes the land to sin, which causes the land, thou shalt not cause the land to sin. That is the abomination. So it's not just talking about finding that she has slept with somebody, but that she has been promiscuous with others. And it happened either twice because her second husband, according to verse 3, writes her a bill of divorcement, gives it to her in her hand, sends her out of his house, or if she's in the second husband's house and her second husband die, then she shall not be taken by the first husband. All right. So now with this being said, let's look at to see if the New Testament, which everybody is, looking at a certain way. When we look at the New Testament, we're going to see if the New Testament either upholds what the Torah says and the prophets or does not uphold what the prophets say. So let's look at this. Before we go to Messiah's words, let's go to the letter of Paul. Paul wrote a letter to the Romans, and he made mention of the Torah in order to prove a point about sin. He says, do you not know, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law have dominion over a man as long as he lives. Present tense. The law has dominion over a man as long as he lives. It says, for the woman which have a husband is bound by the law to her husband so as long as he lives. But if the husband be dead, she is loose from the law of her husband. So then, while her husband lives, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man. Okay, so of course he's using the example of the Torah, the instructions of a marriage and the instructions of the covenant bond between a husband and wife to show that there is no disconnect from the covenant bond except for death. Now, this is not in regards to a fornicating situation in which a person is putting someone away. This is just simply referring to what the person is if they decide to marry someone else while she was married, while her husband is alive, she will be an adulteress before Yah. Okay, so Paul here in his letter to the Romans is upholding what the law says and reiterating it in order to prove a point about being married to sin and dying to sin in order to be married to another, which is to Yahushua and into a covenant with Yahuwah as well. So, this is very clear. If you're married to sin, you have to die to sin. You have to disconnect yourself from sin completely. Or you cannot join yourself with sin and with the Messiah at the same time. You can't join yourself with sin and Yahuwah at the same time. Isaiah 59 verse 2, it says, your sins have separated between you and your Elohim. Your iniquities have separated between you and your Elohim. Your sins have hid his face from hearing you. This is Isaiah 59 verse 2. So the idea of the Torah is definitely clear. It says he's speaking to them that know the law, and he's saying how the law has dominion over man as long as he lives. This is a fact. He's not saying the law is done away with or anything like that. Let's go to what Messiah says now. Messiah mentions in Matthew chapter 5. We're going to start in Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to go to verse 17. And we're going to look at this principle because in the same chapter is where people are saying he's doing away with Yah's law. So he starts out by saying, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say to you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore break one of the least commandments shall teach men, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. And he says, I say unto you, except your righteousness exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. And then he starts going into the commandments. He just said, I'm not doing away with the law. I'm not coming to destroy the law, but he's coming to fulfill. This word fulfill means to bring to reality. Let's take a look at it. All right. I'm trying to speed this up so that way we won't make this study long. Pleiru, it means to replete, to level up, to furnish, meaning to fill, bring in, to execute, satisfy, to finish, to verify, What was happening in this time was that they were breaking the commandment to follow their own traditions. Matthew chapter 15 shows us, he says, why do you transgress the commandment of Elohim by your tradition? They were breaking the commandments of Elohim in order to lift up their own standard. Romans chapter 10, verse 3, it says, for they being ignorant of Elohim's righteousness, going about to establish their own righteousness, they have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of Elohim. So what's happening? Messiah is bringing these laws to reality. He's not doing away with the laws. He's not even making up new laws, because these people did not follow the laws correctly. They followed their own traditions and they established their own way of keeping Yah's laws. So what did he say? He says, you're transgressing the commandments of Elohim by your tradition. So let's look at this. He talks about anger, talking about thou shalt not kill. And let's go down here, right? You have heard that it was said of them in old time. That just means that it was said long time ago, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you, no, he's not going to change the commandments because he's saying, I'm going to say to you now. No. He says, thou shalt not commit adultery. And he says, whosoever looks at a woman in lust have committed adultery already in her heart. What did Yahuwah say in the Old Testament? I hate to say Old Testament. What did he say in the Torah and the prophets? He said that with their lips they call to me, but their hearts is far from me. Is what it was in their heart that was the issue. Deuteronomy 5, verse 29. You have said well, but oh, that you had a heart that you would fear me and keep my commandments, that it may be well with you and your seed always. The problem was their heart. Their heart was engaged in sin before their actions were. So this is what Messiah was trying to remind them of. Moses already knew that. So he starts going into the issue about the eye and the mind and the imagination and things like that, and making sure that you're drastic. Pluck out the eye, pluck out your arm. Make sure that you're drastic with your salvation. Don't just ignore the problem that you have. Be drastic in getting rid of the problem. You're on a computer. You're looking at things you shouldn't look at. Guess what? Turn the computer off at a certain time. When you finish with your work or whatever you're doing, turn off the computer, turn off the TV, turn off the radio. If you're sitting there doing nothing, pick up the Bible. Don't pick up no magazines. You have to be drastic with your salvation. Work out your salvation in fear and trembling. So as he's continuing to talk about thou shalt not commit adultery and lusting after a woman and committing adultery, he goes into the issue with divorce. And he says, it has been said, whosoever shall put away his wife, let her give a bill of divorcement. But I say to you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except for the reason of fornication, causes her to commit adultery, and whosoever shall marry her that is divorced commits adultery. So who is he talking about here? It has been said, whosoever shall put away his wife. There's another instance in which it shows this conversation a little bit more in detail. But let's look at this first. It says, you shall give a right of divorcement, but he's saying, whosoever shall put away his wife except for the reason. So he's talking about a bill of divorcement without the reason that Deuteronomy 24 verse 1 says. Let me remind everybody what Deuteronomy verse 24, verse 1 says. It says, because he have found some uncleanliness in her. That word uncleanliness means nudity, nudity, shame. So she has been nude or she has been promiscuous outside of that marriage covenant. This is the same thing that Yahushua is saying, except for fornication. Now, what does fornication mean? Now, fornication is a Greek word. It's very broad in its sense. Now, the interesting thing is that the scripture is covered with this harlotry, all manner of harlotry, adultery and incest, figurative adultery, idolatry. Look at this, idolatry, um, the act of harlotry, lust, sex, unlawful lust. So where do we find this? Where do we find this understanding of this whole category of unlawful lust? Let's go to Leviticus chapter 20 to show the Messiah's still referencing the law. He's trying to bring back the understanding. You cannot just leave your spouse for whatever reason you want. It has to be based off of specific grounds mentioned in the scripture. Look at what it says. And the man that commits adultery with another man's wife, he that commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. And it goes down a whole different, it talks about a man, a woman, and a beast shall be put to death. Man lying with a beast. It's talking about all these different types of unset apart, wicked, evil desires. That's what it's talking about. So it says, if you want to put away your wife, except for the category of all these unholy, unset apart, wicked acts, if they haven't done any of those acts, then you are causing her to be an adultery if she gets married to someone else. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced shall commit adultery. So you're an adulterer and you're committing whoever marries her to be an adulterer. She's going to be an adulteress, etc., etc. Let's look at another verse just to get a clearer view of the conversation here. So here is not talking about it has been said. He's talking about what they said. Now, they said that they can put away their wife for any reason. Let's see if we can find that verse. Right. So it says here, Mark chapter 10, it says, the Pharisees came to him and asked, is it lawful to put away your wife? And they were testing him. He answered and said, what did Moses command you? You notice, he's not doing away with Moses. He said, what did Moses command you? It says Moses allowed us to write a bill of divorcement and put her away. But is that what Moses said? Deuteronomy 24, verse 1, it says, if he finds uncleanliness, nudity, promiscuity in her, then he can put her away. Yahushua answered and said, for the hardness of your heart, he wrote you this precept. Why did he write that? Not because, oh, you don't want to be forgiven to your unfaithful spouse. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, because your hardness of your heart, which causes you to be unfaithful, is why he's writing it. Because of your sinful heart being an adulterer or an adulteress is why he allowed it. And then he goes into the beginning. In the beginning, Elohim created male and female. For this reason shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall be one flesh. So they shall be no more two, but one flesh. What therefore Elohim have joined together, let no man put asunder. But guess what? You have committed adultery. So because of your hardness of your heart in working this wicked act, you have broken the covenant. Just like how people break the covenant with Yahuwah. It says, and in his house, the disciples asked him again the same matter. He said, whosoever shall put away his wife and marry another commits adultery against her. And if a woman shall put away her husband and be married to another, she commits adultery. This is clear. There's only one exception, which Matthew chapter 5 talks about, which is except for all the categories mentioned in Leviticus 18, the nudity, the nakedness, the arva, and all the categories mentioned in Leviticus 20. This is what the word porneia or fornication covers. This is where we get the horrible word pornography from. So Messiah was bringing them back to the understanding of what Torah was emphasizing on. I need to find this one real quick. Let me see if I could find um well, let me see if I could find this particular verse. I think it's in Luke. I'm not sure. All right, let's see if I can find it, because there's a extension of this conversation, which shows us exactly what they were asking him and why he was bringing them back to um, Moses. So take a look at this, right? Because they kept on coming at him, right? It says, it came to pass that when Yahushua had finished these sayings, he departed from Galilee and came to the coast of Judea beyond the Jordan. Great multitudes followed him, and he healed them there. Pharisees also came to him, testing him, and saying to him, is it lawful to put away his wife for every cause? This is what they were doing. They were putting away their wives. Women were leaving their husbands for every reason that they can conjure up in their mind. Did Moses allow them to do that? No. He says, if you have found promiscuity, if you have found evidence of unfaithfulness and nudity, this is what you're able to do. Not every reason. You can't put away your wife for whatever reason. I'm unhappy. Oh, y'all wouldn't want me to be unhappy. That's so selfish. You're overlooking the covenant that you've made out of your mouth, especially coming into being a believer. Even if you've made a covenant before you was a believer and now you're a believer, you uphold the things that you said out of your mouth. It doesn't, your upholding of the covenant does not depend on another person upholding their covenant. They made a covenant to Yah, you made a covenant to Yah. You keep yours. Look at what it says. Can a man put away his wife for every cause? He said unto them, have you not read that he which made them at the beginning, male and female, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife, and the two shall become one flesh? He's repeating himself now, guys. It says, wherefore they are no more two, but one flesh. What therefore Elohim joined together, let no man put asunder. Why did Moses then command to give them a writing of divorcement to put her away? Because of the hardness of your hearts allowed you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. Why was the beginning it was not so? What was the condition of their hearts in the beginning? There was no sin in the beginning. He did not intend for this to be. This is not something that he requires or wants to even occur. It says, I say to you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, except it be for fornication. So he says this in Matthew 5, Mark 10, and then he says it again in Matthew 19. They come at him again. It says, and shall marry another, commits adultery. Whosoever marries her, which is put away, commits adultery, period. You cannot overlook what he is saying. His disciples came to him and says, if the case of the man be with his wife, is it not good to marry? He said, all men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. There's some people that shouldn't be married. Not all men can understand that. You shouldn't be married. You don't know how to handle being with another human being in this walk with Yahuwah in close proximity. You can only be with a people, amongst the fellowship. That's fine, but you have to understand what you're dealing with. You are dealing with your flesh. If you can't handle it, then don't make foolish decisions by getting involved with people and you can't even take care of them. You can't even take care of them spiritually. You can't even lead them. That doesn't make any sense. You're setting yourself up and you're destroying other people. Just stay by yourself. Stay by yourself. It says, for there is some eunuchs, meaning that unmarried, that are born from their mother's womb where they haven't gotten married. Messiah is one. He haven't gotten married or been with a woman since his mother's womb. There's some eunuchs that have been made eunuchs by men, meaning that they are taking a vow with other men and they're saying, okay, we're gonna take a vow of this celibacy. That's men making their own vows. And it says, and there's eunuchs that have been made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven. Like, I'm gonna do this, like Paul. I'm not gonna get married because I want to focus on this. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. But you have to understand who you are. So this is what he's saying. The hardness of your hearts, he allowed you to put away your wife, but in the beginning it was not so. It was your sinful hearts committing adultery that he caused the allowance of divorcement. What did he say? Whosoever put away his wife except for fornication. He's not saying something different from Moses. He's saying what Moses said. But what were the Pharisees trying to relay? Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? No, but only for one. Fornication. Deuteronomy 24:1. Only if you find promiscuity or nudity or nakedness, evidence of nakedness with others outside of the covenant relationship. This is how Yahuwah deals with us as well. We just looked at that in Hosea. Hosea chapter, what we looked at, Hosea chapter 2, verse 9 and 10, because of the whoredoms of Israel going after other gods. That's what broke the covenant relationship. That's the same thing in a marriage. When you go outside of the one and only person that you're put together with, you are breaking the covenant, the marriage covenant. And this is why people are put away. This is why people are put away. Now, there's a verse in the scriptures that talks about Yahuwah hating putting away. Let me see if I can find that verse. Well, let me see if I could find it real quick. I'm gonna look at. Okay. So we have Malachi chapter 2, verse. Let's look at the scripture, right? So it says Malachi chapter 2, verse 14, right? It says, yet you say, wherefore? This is Israel. Wherefore? Because Yahuwah have been witness between you and the wife of your youth, against whom you have dealt treacherously. Yet is she your companion and the wife of your covenant? Did not he make one, yet he had the residue of the Ruach? And wherefore one? That he might seek a godly seed. Therefore take heed to your Ruach, your mind. Let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth. This is what Malachi is saying. Don't deal treacherously with your wife. You putting away your wife for any reason? Don't deal treacherously against your wife. It says, for Yahuwah, Elohim of Israel, said he hates putting away. How? He hates putting away treacherously. It says, for one covers violence against his garment, saith Yahuwah of hosts. Therefore take heed to your mind, your Ruach, your mind, that you deal not treacherously. He says, pay attention to what's inside of your mind and stop dealing with other people treacherously in covenants, and stop dealing with your wife treacherously. Stop dealing with women treacherously. Stop dealing with people treacherously. Let's look at what Yahuwah has to do, just to show that even though he hates putting away, this is not something that he does because it's just freely done out of him. Look at what he says. says, thus saith Yahuwah, where is the bill of divorcement whom I have put away? Or which my creditors, of whom have I sold you? It says, behold, your iniquities have sold yourselves, your transgressions, for your transgressions is your mother put away. I'm not just putting your mother away for any reason. The mother is the city. I'm not putting Jerusalem away for any reason, because right after this, of course, we saw captivity come. I'm putting it away because of your transgressions. Your transgressions. You have broken the covenant, the marriage covenant, and now you are being put away. So let's look at what he tells us to remember as well. It says, look at Abraham, your father, and Sarah that bear you. You are children of Sarah. It says, for I called him alone and blessed him and increased him. So he's telling us to go back to the covenant. He's telling us to remember the covenant. And we see how merciful he is to an adulterous people. So that doesn't mean that Yahuwah doesn't divorce or puts away, because we see Jerusalem in captivity. We see Jerusalem in desolation. We see the people dying in the wilderness because of their own transgressions. They are being put away from the covenant because of their own transgressions. So again, Deuteronomy 24 verse 1 tells us clearly what the Messiah has been reiterating, that these dudes in Matthew chapter 19 was trying to put away their wives for every reason. And Deuteronomy says, it come to pass that you find no favor in our eyes, because he have found uncleanliness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement. This is where the hardening of the hearts come in. Not because a person is heartbroken, can't deal with the relationship, wants to go out because of unfaithfulness, breaking of the covenant relationship. No. The hardness of the heart comes to the person that went out and broke the covenant. When Yahuwah put away Israel, right? When he says, where's the bill of divorcement for your mother? Was he saying that his heart was hard because he put her away? No. He says, your transgressions because of your transgressions, you have been put away. So whose heart was hardened? The one who was in transgression, not the one putting away the one that was in transgression. So we have to understand marriage is clear, divorce is clear. There's only one way to put away your spouse. Sex is not marriage. Betrothal and full marriage is totally different. And they all have to be put into perspective when we come into this topic. Because it's not being put into perspective, a lot of people are saying, oh, you have sex, you're married, so you got a lot of wives. We're going to talk about multiple wives in a different video, but I just wanted to basically break down this so we could focus on this in this video. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to give us an email and let us know what you want to see a video of us breaking down. We'll definitely be happy to do that for you. And I hope that Yahuwah bless you. Hope that you was edified by this study. And I look forward to seeing you in the next class. Shalom, guys. Shalom, shalom. Thank you guys for joining our study today. I hope that it was edifying. And if you want to support this ministry, you can support us on 4alc.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube page. Click the like button and the notification bell. I hope to see you guys on the next study. Shalom, guys.